recording for the board game project. So this was the board game I produced, and these were all the pieces that would come with it. Obviously, they're in a very beta stage, with not too much aesthetic wise, but basically it comes with 3 different battle maps depending on which region you'd end up fighting in. And then you have your main city tiles, which are all here, which are the much larger ones where you find shops which are these and stuff like that, and you can rest within them and stuff like that. Then your way stations as well, which is because basically the cities work on a tier system, so I had to somehow allow skeletons to be able to get heals, because I didn't create any cities above tier 2 at this current point. Then apart from that, then you have ore tiles and boss tiles, which are stuff like these. They have little markings on underneath them to show where they belong to, what tier they are, what tile they are, and then how much the copper and stuff like the ore is in. And then you have gear stuff and tiles like that, which this is what you find in the shop. You could get a med pack which has the inventory slots it takes, its weight, how many cats it costs, and how many charges you get per uses of them. Then you have stuff like this, which is the gear, which this is a body armor, drifter's leather jacket. This goes with, shows how many cats it's worth once again, how much weight, and then how many inventory slots it takes. And there's a lot more surrounding there, because they also work on the inventory system. Which then you also have character sheets like this, which basically a player would fill out when they decide their race and stuff like that. All of this has all the information the player would need, their weight stats, their hunger stats, their progress towards the next stats, inventory, weapon stats, how many cats they have, levels, sub-race, main race, and then health, and then blood/oil. It is recommended to have a secondary note-taking sheet within this game. Alongside that, there was a manual that I made up for it as well, to help my test audience better understand how to play the game when I tested it. It comes with instructions on how to set up the board and stuff like that, how to set up your characters, how each stat works and what it does, and how it actually progresses. This also goes into the hunger mechanics, encumbrance, combat mechanics as well, blood loss mechanics, and then also goes into how much XP you gain from combat and stuff like that, in a bit more of a detailed. This also covers player death, your victory and losses, and stuff like that. Then this is the calculations for the damage, and then dodge and block calculations as well. This shows a lot of stats on basically what it relies on to that. Then this goes into mining, which basically shows what mining is, how much your ore gain is based on your level and stuff like that. This goes into city mechanics, what you find within cities. This goes into what you say should have, so that when a player is setting up, because basically within the character setup, when the player set up board, someone has to decide to be the game master, which basically they control the stores, what goes into them and stuff like that, but they use this as a rough guide as to what should be inside the stores. Then this goes into races, so benefits and things that they can't do in detail. Then this is encounters. Basically, the encounter system works on a patrol route that they go on over there. So at a certain time of day, a certain patrol will be on tile 8, and if you are on tile 8 at the same time, then you are start to go into combat or run away. Which then what you do is you roll a dice, and depending on what you got, it divides on if you get the harder version of that encounter or the easier version of the encounter. This also gives you what loot you get from them. This is boss encounters count with that. Also initiatives, so how much initiative each enemy has. This isn't in the game manual, I forgot to add it on the digital version, but yeah. So patrol routes are here. And then basically this goes into fail states, where basically if you're eaten alive or enslaved, what happens at those points. This goes into gear, how many stats you know, so like your base damage, any other bonuses you get with it, or negatives. Yeah, and then that's basically kind of the whole thing there. Anyway, time to set up the board. Speed this up in Toast. Oh, I forgot to say, also the enemies work on a tier system as well. So it'd be like you'd have 5 tier 2 enemies and stuff like that, but an encounter or something like that. Which is described within the game manual itself in intro into board setup in page 1, as in the glossary here. So you basically use your border zone in the middle, stand desert on the left, and then opens valley, and then rebirth at the top, along with the swamp. Then the next step after that is you want to basically set up your character sheet, which looks something like this. So first of all, you decide on your race, and then your possible sub-race, and then you fill in these values based on those. As some races have less blood, some of them have more health than others, and then some of them have proficiencies, which is what you would cover within a secondary note sheet. So a note-taking sheet. Like when I did do my first test now, this was one of the note sheets that I ended up getting taken. We didn't get fully food, but still kind of decent. Oh, I forgot to put in my stations. Okay, so then once the board is set up and the characters are set up, the game master then sets up the store for the player to go into. Because every player starts off in the border zone with 1,000 cats, which a player then may start their playthrough with they decide to go into the city itself and use one of their 24 action points they have per day, which relates to a single hour, and the player can only use one action point per other player's use of action point. So they go into there, then they're met with this, which is the store tile, which you place on the equipment and stuff like that. Since the border zone is a tier 1 city, they only have dried meat and a basic first aid kit. But if they were a tier 2 city, then they would also have the second store tile piece. So if they go into it, then they would looking at the how much they buy. They have 1,000 cats. So let's say they buy some dry meat, they add it to their inventory, minus it to their total weight and stuff like that. They can use that as them to stop them from hunger. They can also use it to buy armor and stuff like that, which then once you buy the armor and you've added the weight into it, you can also then look at what but yeah, so that would give +1 to the armor value, which would minus basically 1 from every bit of damage they take. And then the game master can change this up as many times as they want. It's all up to the game master themselves. So after this, but then let's say a player instead decides to go and recruit with their first 1,000, then they get another character sheet with a selection usually. This one isn't filled out, but you basically get a selection decided by the game master of races and stuff like that, all starting out with the same level as you. 0 all over, but they would be in that list. Then you pay 1,000, they can join them, and you would add another player tile for it, giving you another 24 action points throughout the day. Now, to get money, what you do is you move to one of these tiles surrounding that. And then, so let's say player 2 moves up to a small iron node. What they do first then is you look at what hours the game starts at midnight, and you've been into the store and you've found about 2 hours of gameplay within that point. So then that puts it to 2 AM. So you go to the guard patrols, where the game master would go for the guard patrols, look through for tile 2, midnight to 2 AM, and it is currently 2 AM on patrol route A, which then for patrol route, then you go look into the encounters, find your enemies within which zone they are in, which one goes on patrol route in. For this case it is starving bandits, and then you would roll a dice. You would roll a dice which would decide your encounter. So let's say hypothetically I rolled a 3, then I would be facing 2 tier 1.5 enemies and 6 tier 1 enemies, all with their own initiatives as seen here, and then the loot you can gain from them afterwards as well. Or if I rolled above a 3, then it'd be 1 tier 1.5 enemy and 4 tier 1 enemies. Now a player can decide to either face this, usually battle with their squad, or they can decide to run away, which in this one they'd have to roll a dice until they roll 6, taking 5 damage for each failed attempt. This is minused by a certain stat per one, but I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But yeah, but let's say it is instead 3 AM. They instead spend 2 action points getting a small iron node, which then they would go check how much of it. So then the iron is about 9 kilograms. No, the iron is worth 7 kilograms, but it's only worth 90 cats. So when they go to sell it, it would only be worth 45 cats. This goes into their inventory and takes up 6 slots. So they can go back to town and sell that for 45 cats, adding to their total cat total. Now another aspect of the gameplay is that's what you're meant to do eventually, is face combat as a squad. So let's say you all move to the same iron node, where then you face off against against an enemy squad, so starving bandits in this case. We'll use that encounter with them. So place that down. Place the players can place their squad in any way they want, kind of around anywhere on the starting line of this grid, whereas the enemies will start off on the other side. So then once you're in combat, how it works is you have your stat values and basically your athletics, which work here, which you can move 1 centimeter and you get plus 0.1 per athletics to move. So you work out their movement, and then player moves based on initiative rolls till eventually you're in combat. You end up in combat like this. So then basically, when you are in range of an enemy, you are forced to either attack or move away. Let's say if you were attacking, you then go to your damage calculation. Each tier enemy has their own set of pluses, bonuses, and base armor value. So they do around 10 damage at tier 1 with about a 4 armor value. So we add in our base damage or weapon stat. Let's say he's using a Naginata. It is roughly around 10-ish damage, with a few levels they made it attack. Once there you add in your combat skill, which your combat skill is your weapon skill plus strength or athletics based on which weapon type you're on. So you add that together to add your pluses to it. Add your pluses to the damage basically. And then the enemy, who is controlled by the game master, decides on if they want to go for a block or dodge calculation. So let's say they decide to dodge. They roll a 6-sided die, and then they minus the opponent's melee attack skill, and they plus their own dodge skill, which both have their own calculations with it. Yeah. So then let's say you have a level 10 melee attack, you would minus 0 off the roll, but then the opponent has a level 20 dodge, so they plus 1 to the roll. So let's say they rolled a 3, plus 1, that equals 4, which then allows them to take minus 25% of the damage off, meaning your damage, which was 10, goes to 7.5 instead. So minusing that off their total health, which each enemy has the same amount of health as you. Now, once this enemy has took damage, he starts to bleed per every 2 turns of combat, eventually reaching either blood loss, knockout, stuff like that, and then combat goes on and on and on, obviously. Basically, eventually, that's basically how the game works. There's a lot of mechanics to work through. I'd probably recommend going through the game manual as